Thank goodness week 2 is on the way for the Dolphins because week 1 was absolute ugliness with that 33-8 loss at Indianapolis. What's going on, Dolphins fans? Welcome to this week's edition of Dolphins Deep Dive with Perk. I am Chris Perkins, your host, your South Florida Sun Sentinel Miami Dolphins columnist. That is Dave Hyde making his debut for the 2025 season. He is your Sun Sentinel Dolphins columnist, Sun Sentinel columnist. He had a good column today on whether this is the last stand for Chris Greer, Mike McDaniel, and Tua Tagovailoa. We will talk about that today. Hyde, I like that tropical background there in Coral Gables, man. You must make a lot of money, huh?
I'm trying to uplift people's spirits, Perk. Give a little back to nature feel. Breathe in, breathe out, because there's a lot of pent up frustration and anger over that start to this. It just confirmed everything we feared, everything I feared this summer. Watching them practice, watching their moves over the off season, and it was like every fear come to life.
It was. We're going to delve deeply into that appropriately enough on Dolphins Deep Dive. Hey, welcome to all of our viewers here on YouTube. We want to remind you to leave a comment, a thought, or a question in our live chat, the best place to get intelligent Dolphins conversation. We'd like to remind you that if you missed any part of this show, you can catch the podcast on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcast. And we would like to tell you that you can sign up for our weekly newsletter, The Fins Flash, by scanning the QR code on your screen. On today's show, we're going to talk about Tua and whether the performance against Indianapolis was a one-off or whether it was the start of a trend. We're going to talk about Mike McDaniel and see if his job is safe through September. We're going to ask, where was Anthony Weaver's front seven against the Colts? I thought that front seven was going to do some special things. And we're also going to have our predictions for this week's pivotal game against New England, a pivotal game already in week 2. It's an incredible thing here. As we always say, there's an ocean of possibilities. Let's dive in. All right, Dave Hyde. Tua's performance, I mean, he has the 3 turnovers. He lost a fumble. He has 2 interceptions. I want to know, do you think that if is Tua good enough to deliver a playoff win for this team? And I know talking playoffs is like,
wow, Turk, really, Turk. You're going there? You're going to January from here?
I know it.
Man.
I know it.
Look, here we are, year 6, and a lot of the questions that we had in year 6 about Ryan Tannehill, from health to liftability, if that's a phrase, of the team. Can he lift the team, or is he accompanying the team? But let's start with what we've seen. He just didn't look comfortable at all back there from the start. And Lou Anarumo, the former Dolphins secondary coach, now the Colts defensive coordinator, former Bengals defensive coordinator, made him really uncomfortable with some of the things that they were doing. And there you go. There's, to me, it's a continuation of last year, though, when this offense could not figure out how to get to the parts they want to get, how to get to the speed of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. And, that starts with Tua, and he's got to be better. And, the question always is with this offense, they want him to get rid of the ball quickly. Is that because of his health? Is it because of that's best for the offense? But defenses have caught up to that. They caught up to it last year when they said, okay, you want to get rid of the ball quick, we're going to take some of those initial passing lanes away. And Lou Anarumo, I haven't seen the stat, but he blitzed a lot. I mean, that was his game plan going in when you read the players' quotes after the games. And he made Tua really uncomfortable. Now you have a 3-game window, sub-step, going back to last year. Tua, 5 interceptions, 3 fumbles in 3 games. And he says turnovers don't come in bunches. I mean, he's got to be a lot better. He's in the $50 million club. This isn't like we're playing on a rookie contract and you say, oh, well, he's going to grow into it or something. No. He wanted that $50 million. They gave him that $50 million. You're judged on that now. okay? And that was even within the stratosphere of acceptability.
Right, right. And you know what, Hyde, the numbers on Tua are very ugly. And you know me, I'm the king of these numbers. So Tua in his last 12 starts is 6-6. In his last 17 starts, he's 8-9. And you know, I had some reservations about the Tua to Tyreek connection starting off the season because look, when we last left off last season, that connection was struggling. In the last two games that they played together, you know, Tua's last two games were San Francisco and Houston because he missed the final two games of the season. Tua to Tyreek against Houston, 2 receptions, 36 yards on 7 targets. Against San Francisco, 3 receptions for 29 yards on 7 targets. Against Indy now, 4 receptions for 40 yards on 6 targets. So the last 3 games, 9 receptions, 105 yards on 20 targets. I mean, 9 receptions on 20 targets. And you had the interceptions against Houston. 2 of those 3 interceptions were going to Tyreek. We saw the interception on Sunday going to Tyreek. I mean, and they had no time together in the offseason because Tyreek had the right wrist surgery and then he had the oblique injury. So Sunday was the first time in almost 9 months that these two were in a competitive situation. They didn't have any joint practices, no preseason games. So this combination, this combo is very, very rusty. It's going to take some time to get going.
No. We're not getting. They don't have time. They don't have time.
I mean, no,
they gotta get it. It's got to go.
It's
gotta go. Right.
But Hyde, things don't just work like that. Like and they don't have the time. That's the problem here. They don't have the time. Like this is nearly a must-win game on Sunday. How do they make up for this? Like how do you get this? How do you force this? Because this, you know what I say, that this offense is about 2 things: Tyreek Hill and the threat of Tyreek Hill. This team can't beat you in any other way. I'm wondering how do you force this combination, this Tua to Tyreek, and if it doesn't happen, how do you score?
Well, wasn't that they brought in all these coaches? Passing game coordinator. Yeah. Now they got 3 coordinators. They had 8 months to figure it out. They drafted 2 big guards. Now they lost James Daniels in the first 5 plays. But
you got Darren Waller. You got Nick Westbrook.
Well, that gets in the whole. They got these guys who aren't helping them. I mean, they're off-season personnel decisions. Let's. I mean, we can get into this. This is. Again, what I said at the top of the show was it confirmed all my fears about the Dolphins right away, from depth of the offensive line to, you know, are they counting on some of these guys in the front 7 on defense who aren't all the way back health-wise for whatever reason, to the cornerback play. And that gets into the big trade they made, Jalen Ramsey, Jonnu Smith, and $7 million for Minkah Fitzpatrick. Look, they had to trade Jalen Ramsey. Everybody knows that, okay? But he's still an upper-level cornerback. They miss him on Sunday. The point isn't that they traded these guys. They didn't replace them. Right. They didn't do anything to replace Jalen Ramsey, your number 1 cornerback. And so when Kader Kohou goes out, all of a sudden you're in desperation at that point. And tight end, their replacement. Are you serious? Their replacement was Darren Waller, which I wrote a column on this last week. Great story. How can you not root for him? For all he's been through and all that. But you're counting on him as your starting tight end, a guy who missed all last year and couldn't practice all summer, and he's your tight. What kind of advanced planning is that? And so you wonder, they have problems in the opening game. They're trying to, you know, Tanner Connor's their top tight end, I guess, right now. I mean, and so again, as it has, to me, this wasn't a one-off game. This is a continuation of the last several years of head-scratching decisions they've made, and you know, it came to roost in this game. And the question is, was just everything went awful for them this one game, or is this who they are?
Yeah, I agree. And I think that to a large extent, this is who they are, Dave, because what I don't like is they've kind of hung Tua out to dry here. And I think that when you look at some of the coaching hires with Philbin and Gase and McDaniel, you have three guys. I'm leaving the flow out of this. You have three coaches who convince management, I can turn Ryan Tannehill into a great quarterback. I can turn Tua into a great quarterback. And I don't think that the Dolphins understand you need to build a complete team. You need a running game. You need a defense. They believe kind of these coaches who say, I can do magic things with the quarterback, and we're seeing the result of that no, you can't do magic things with the quarterback. Your quarterbacks are NFL caliber, but they're not Hall of Famers. Like they need help, and they don't build this team correctly. To me, there's way too much on Tua's plate. Tua's a good quarterback, but he's not a great quarterback. And so he's kind of hung out to dry. You tried to get him a running game with Alexander Madison and Ollie Gordon, and Madison goes out with the neck injury. But then where's Ollie Gordon? Sunday we saw a lot more of the H-hand running left and right, not straight up the middle. No team is going to bring their eighth safety into the box to defend against a Devon H-hand bruising run. Like, they can handle it. They can absorb his yards. And so I think Tua has been done a disservice by the coaches, but let's not make Tua the victim here.
I was going to say, they have limited resources in part because they're paying Tua over. He's in the $50 million club, okay? And you look at the quarterbacks in that, and that takes resources from elsewhere. But they tried to build the interior of the offensive line this year. They tried to get a more power running game. But here we are in game one. Ollie Gordon, 2 carries for 4 yards. I mean, so either they didn't commit to it, or they were, they were down the whole game. I mean, from the first series. So at some point they got to throw the ball. But the point was, you didn't see any of that supposed help for this offense and for Tua and the deep passing game. You didn't see any change in identity from what they were last year, which was a very frustrated, short passing game, and a quarterback who he looked lost and frustrated. And when he was rushed, which was often, he looked very unathletic. He looked like he's running in mud against guys who were coming down quickly on him. So, the real problem is Indianapolis isn't a great team. It's in the mediocre club at best. And here comes another one, New England, mediocre at best, and 1 o'clock game. So anyways, if you're the Dolphins, I hear them talking so far, and it's okay. It can't get worse. It can't get worse. I was around 1-17. It can get worse, and so you better really come up with some answers.
Yeah, I agree. Before we get going any further, we want to say what's up to a lot of our people here: Billy Batson, Dead Streak, Tim Corey, Mal B. Crazy, True Blazer, Shake Money, Rashawn Brokenbow, Pretty Boy, Dave Harbor checking in from San Diego as always, Ender Fireplays, YT, Miguel Cardenas, Scott Pro. I mean, great crowd here. Great crowd. Rob, Gambino Gardens. Great crowd here. DeHesse, I Got Game, AJ, NJ. Mike, let me ask you this, Dave Hyde. What can be done with Tua? I mean, here's my other stat with Tua, and I say this all the time about this offense is about Tyreek and the threat of Tyreek. Since the start of 2023, the Dolphins are 11-0 when Tyreek has 100 or more yards, 7-17 when he has 99 or fewer. It's a one-trick pony offense. It's one-dimensional. Like, what do you do about that at this point? Now, you mentioned, you've got Mike McDaniel as the architect of the offense. You got Frank Smith as the offensive coordinator, Bobby Slowick as the senior passing game coordinator, Darrell Bevell as the quarterback's coach. You've devoted a lot of resources to this passing game. I mentioned you got Nick Westbrook-Akine as the big receiver. You got Darren Waller as your new tight end. None of this was a factor on Sunday. Again, I'm not making Tua the victim here, but he's got all of these voices. They got him all of this kind of C-grade talent. He's kind of out there alone. Again, Tua's not the victim here. He's the $50 million man. He's got to work miracles, but what can Tua do here?
Well, they've misread who Tua is from the start. Okay.
Exactly.
Which is they thought, or maybe they still think, he's a top 7 quarterback, because that's the way they're structuring their offense. And beyond that, to have him get rid of the ball, that number you threw out there, of wins and with Tyreek, the breakdown I'd be curious of is how many of those wins were against playoff teams, or how many 100 yards was he allowed against playoff teams?
I'll tell you, in the last 2 years, now the last 2 years plus one game, neither Tyreek nor Jalen Waddle has a 100-yard game against the playoff team. Right, teams have figured out this offense.
Meaning a good defense led by a good coordinator with a good plan on how we're going to attack Tua and this passing game. And it's simple. When the numbers are that overstated, it's very simple that they've come up with the answer for pressing at the line of scrimmage, taking away passing lanes, blitzing to make them really not even attempt to get to the second read. There's a lot of things people are doing right now that the Dolphins, what's the answer to it? The answer is running the ball.
Yes.
The answer is, what they did last year, having the tight end have 88 catches. Yep. But their defense are going to do everything to prevent Tyreek, especially, and secondarily, because he is a number 2, he keeps looking like a number 2 receiver. Jalen Waddle. And so, get deep pass. They're not going to let them go. They're going to say, you drive 12, 15 plays downfield. We'll let you do that. If you can do that and score, we'll tip our hat, because we think you're going to break down, or we'll get a big player somewhere in that series.
Rob says the week 1 offense looked no better than last year. It missed Jonnu Smith. You mentioned Jonnu had the 88 receptions last year. Devon Achane had 78 receptions last year. I think it goes beyond that. I think that this is just poor design, poor game planning. This offense is so one-dimensional. It's Tua to Tyreek. Like, that's how they eat. And if they don't have that, they can pile up as many yards as they want to. They're not going to score touchdowns. They're going to get some Jason Sanders field goals, and Jason Sanders isn't even out there. Riley Patterson, who didn't attempt an extra point or a field goal on Sunday. You're going to get a lot of field goal drives, but you're not going to score touchdowns. That's what bothers me is I agree with you. They misread who Tua is. They continue to misread who Tua is. They're counting on the genius of Mike McDaniel and Tua to carry this offense. And there's not genius there. I would say they're both above average, but there's like 20 of those combinations in the NFL that are above average. They're not elite. They're not Sean McDermott and Josh Allen or Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes or any of those great combinations, right? John Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson. And that's kind of how they think. That's how they regard this offense. That's how they design this offense. I think it's more fundamental. Like they've hung Tua out to dry. He's got way too much on his plate. A good running game would help him. A good defense would help him. A good offensive line would help him. But he's really got none of that.
Well, they got good. Remember when Mike came in here and the identity of the offense was really well thought out, how they did it, how they changed the look of the Dolphins offense. And teams borrowed their ideas. You look at, I talked to a couple of defensive coordinators, and they say, you see little thoughts of the Dolphins offense around the league. The point being, by now, everybody's seen what they do and is comfortable with how to run defenses against it. And you see it playing out on the field. Nobody's I think we're going to look back, and the highlight of Mike McDaniel era will be the 70 points against Denver in a September win. And look where the two teams have gone since then. Sean Payton has built that franchise, that roster, to now they're a contender. And the Dolphins, have regressed because teams have figured out what they do, and they never put a layer on top of their offense to change it. And the layer was to be the power running game this year, run up the middle, and for different reasons. And again, they were behind a lot, so they weren't going to run. But still, 2 carries for 4 yards for your power runner.
Right. I agree. And Hyde, let's that leads us into our next segment, and it's is Mike McDaniel safe through September? And the thing is that, again, as you wrote,
that's the over under now, huh? Oh my God.
I know. It has shrunk from the whole season to this week, right? And as you wrote today in your column, that was very well written as usual. Careers are on the line for Chris Grier, for Mike McDaniel, and for Tua. And here's what I'll say about Mike McDaniel. I talked about how it's a one-dimensional offense, and the offense has been figured out. In these first 3 games, he's facing coaches that all defeated him in the last time that they saw him, right? Shane Steichen of Indianapolis beat him last year. What was that score? 16-10. Mike Vrabel, this week's coach of New England, beat him in that Tennessee game in 2023, 28-27. And Sean McDermott of Buffalo, next week's the week 3 opponent, he spanks him. He's 6-1 against McDaniel on the 6-game winning streak. The Dolphins are 0-4 up there in Buffalo. But beyond that, Dave Hyde, the players look uninspired, unprepared, disinterested. Mike McDaniel, if he starts off, and here's why I say it's a near must win. No week 2 game is must win, but it's near must win because they're not going to win in Buffalo on Thursday night. A short week, a road trip, injuries. Buffalo always spanks them. If he goes to 0-3 with losses to Indy and New England, I don't know what his future is. In that situation, is he safe through September? And even if he's 1-2, it's kind of shady going into that Jets game. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, now we're getting into reading Steve Ross, right? I mean, right. And who knows what Steve Ross will do? I would think Steve Ross, through his history, has erred on the side of patience over impatience. And right. let's face it, if they go 0-4, 0-3, and then we're talking organically tank, right? Organically tank, because and what's the best way to do that? Because at 0-3, virtually all their hope is out the window of getting where they want. So now we're talking how many wins can they get? And so, look, Chris Grier, we can sit here and argue forever. It'd be a good show. Who's to blame more, Chris Grier or Mike McDaniel, or who's responsible more? To me, they're just married at the hip and trying to undo the knot of who's responsible more or less. It really does. So they're together in this, and then their major decision was Tua, and they banked. Every era banks somebody on some quarterback, and they overlooked the questions about him, and not only started with him because Mike inherited him, but they invested them, and so all 3 of these guys, they're fighting for their Dolphin careers right now, and they need a win. They need to come out of this opening games now 2-2, and give them a fresh start really on where they can go.
Yeah, Mike McDaniel is his regular season record now 28-24. That's a .538 winning percentage, so he's a little bit over 500. But Dave, since that loss to Tennessee, he's 10-12. This team is 10-12, .455 winning percentage, and I've written this number also, and I'm going to try to recall it off the top of my head. Since they defeated Detroit back in 2022, they moved to 5-3, and I think Detroit might have been like 1-7 or whatever. But since then, Detroit has gone like 35-9, and the Dolphins have been like 23-21. And so that kind of shows like how how you pointed this out before, but you know how one team, Denver, goes in this direction, the Dolphins go in this direction. Same thing with Detroit. They go in this direction, and the Dolphins go in this direction. And when we look at McDaniel, there's a couple of texts here that CCRR says the excuses for Lil Tua are hilarious. 6 years in, and some people still can't see he's a bust. And then Pretty Boy says we need to run the ball. I'm still shocked about that we don't run the ball. The bigger offense for McDaniel is believing too much in Tua or not running the ball and having this offensive imbalance and predictability.
Well, the biggest offense to me right now is how, they've tried to build up the lines in the last couple off seasons and how physically they got handled by Indianapolis. We sit here and talk about pass game Tua, but until the Dolphins, until whoever's sitting in the GM spot and the coach's spot decide we're going to become a physical team, all the cute stuff, it's not going to matter against the good teams because they won't have a chance. So, again, Tua's in his 6th year. McDaniel's in his 4th year trying to change his ways. And you did see you are seeing a little Mike McDaniel name Zach Sealer for making a mistake yesterday.
Right.
That might be the first time you rarely hear a coach anywhere, but certainly McDaniel name a player. And so, what does that mean? I don't know. But there is a difference to McDaniel. Will it translate through him, through his words and players onto the field? We sure didn't see it in game 1.
Yeah, and you know what? And I agree with you. We have seen some differences in McDaniel going back to last season where he actually demoted some guys, right? David Long, the linebacker, Raheem Mostert, Durham Smythe. They finally lost jobs. That was the first time in the McDaniel era anybody has lost jobs due to performance. But when I wonder about the McDaniel changes on and off the field, it's not enough. We don't see enough run game. Like you said, we don't see enough physicality. They haven't gotten Tua enough help. I don't know about the, cutting down on the tardiness. Maybe that's happened. Maybe it has. I just don't see a sense of urgency with this team, Hyde. And something that you might understand that I've said a few times, this locker room in 30 years to me of being in pro locker rooms, it is the most chill, laid back locker room I've ever been in. Like nobody has that necessary paranoia that you need to have of if I mess up, I could lose my starting job. Or if I mess up, I might get cut. We saw what Adam Gase did in 2016, right? By cutting those linemen, Jamil Douglas, and I think Dallas Thomas, maybe Billy Turner. That's not the reason that the Dolphins made the playoffs that year. Jay Ajayi was the number one reason. But you've got to send a message at some point. Has McDaniel sent enough messages, not just through cutting people, but, and I also said on Twitter last night that I think I failed the public yesterday by not asking McDaniel, well, what did you do to let these players know the Indianapolis performance is not good enough? Did you raise your voice? Did you do something out of character? And not fake tough guy stuff, but just I'm the adult in the room stuff. And I didn't ask the players that. I'll probably ask them that tomorrow. But the changes that McDaniel has made, are they good enough? Are they on the right track? I've seen hints of it, but I'm not convinced he's gone far enough.
Well, we haven't seen results. I mean, look, right. All that matters are the results, right? We can sit here and talk, he did this and he did that. And we heard Chris Greer and him talk about players staying after practice. Like, are you kidding me? Like, these are the pros. They should stay after practice all the time. And we're praising them. But to go with that, they did have guys like Cam Smith, who's been around for 4 years now and hasn't played. And why are you keeping him? I don't care how thin your defensive core backfield is. Cut him. That's a statement. Darren Waller isn't practicing, and he's your starting tight end. What statement are you sending the team with that about hard work and staying after practice and culture and all that way? So it's a mixed message they've been sending the team. And I know coaches. I talked to a coach yesterday, and he said I would have cut somebody on Monday. After a game like that, I would have found somebody who's not really important, but made a big mistake in the game and cut them. and to get everybody's attention that, okay, we got to circle the wagons and everybody's got to come out and play better. But you didn't see anything like that.
Yeah, yeah. Dead Street says, remember, it's a player-led team this year. Ha ha. That's another thing is the, I call it the great experiment with the player empowerment that I like what McDaniel has done in that respect, but it's failed. And you need to make a change. And there's been signs that there is more of a change coming here because, I like going with the 6 captains. But I think that the team captain, not including Tyreek.
Oh, enough of the captains. I don't want to hear any more talk about captains.
Wait.
This is the NFL. We don't care about captains. It's not high school. I don't care. I don't care about the captains.
Wait, Hyde. I think it's a better statement on the players not wanting to tolerate Tyreek's BS. It's not a statement on whether Tyreek is upset. And so I took that as a positive, but again, we didn't see results of that. Like
I tell you, I really don't. I don't think the players care about the captains. I really don't. I think what they care about. I think what they care about is on third down when they're in the huddle and they look and they say, "That guy, I can trust him. He's going to make the play." That's the guy. That's the leader of the team right there. Whoever that guy is, and they're looking for somebody like that. All this nonsense about I've never seen a team talk about captains more than the Dolphins of the last several years. Like it matters. It doesn't matter. Okay, it really doesn't matter who the captain is. Okay, but what matters is finding players to make play. And coming into the season, I had a couple hopes that Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb would be back from their injuries and back to the guys they were, because Jalen Phillips especially looked like he could be special. And maybe he still gets there, but you didn't see it on Sunday. And the one game reaction is his body still either isn't ready or all those injuries he suffered are taking their toll. And then Bradley Chubb starting to get some age on him. He had a sack, but really the defense started, when you look at, okay, what can change? It started counting on those two guys. And they're going to have a bigger, because Daniel Jones, I can't believe I'm saying Peyton Manning started 288 games. Dan Marino, I think it was 252. And neither of them, in fact, no quarterback since 1977 scored on every possession in a game when you have 7 possessions. Daniel Jones did in his first start against the Dolphins. That's, we're sitting here talking about the offense, but the defense was awful too.
Right. That leads us into our next segment. Perfect segue. You're such a professional, Dave Hyde. We know Anthony Weaver, where was his front 7? And as much as, I was a bigger proponent of the front 7 than of the offense. I came in danger of overhyping the front 7. I thought they were going to carry this team for the first month while the Tua to Tyreek connection kind of got more familiarity. These guys were stonewalled high. I mean, they did almost nothing. Chubb had the 1 sack, but we didn't see a whole lot of pressure. We didn't see any kind of a threat from these guys. And look, and Indy, if you listen to Pro Football Focus, Indy had the number 5 offensive line coming into the season. We know that their left guard, Quentin Nelson, and their left tackle, Bernhard Raimann, are quality players. Who cares? You've got Chubb and Phillips and Chop and Matthew Judon, a deep front 7 that was, and really some of the stuff that we saw being done to Tua, Anthony Weaver's defense did to Tua during training camp, the unblocked guys coming in for blitzes. And, that's a separate argument why the offensive line couldn't have fixed that. But we saw good stuff from Weaver's defense, even in Chicago and Detroit in the joint practices. They didn't even show up on
that was a surprising part of the game to me. When I talked earlier, the physicality of the lines, we've seen the Dolphin offensive line have trouble. Okay, and then you take a starter away, and so I've seen it before. I don't accept it but I thought the Dolphins defensive line, like you, this is the front 7. That's the strength of the team right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it certainly wasn't. And you mentioned the Colts offensive line, and they build. You talk about a team; they know how to build their offense. They build it around that offensive line above
Right.
the running game with Jonathan Taylor. That was
Yep.
the Dolphins were expecting that, and Daniel Jones comes out and throws five straight passes
Yeah.
to start the game for 57 yards, and that sort of got Daniel Jones into a nice rhythm, and it got the Dolphin defense off the mark of okay, what to expect and what to and. But here we go again. Here comes New England. Similar, look at these opening four quarterbacks that the Dolphin defense is going to face. All four of them can run.
Yes.
And so you talk about that's given the Dolphins troubles in the last few years for whatever reason. But here we go. The what Daniel Jones put on tape, that he could put it on tape has to scare you a little.
Yeah. And I thought that, Jordan Brooks had 14 tackles, if I'm not mistaken. I thought the inside linebackers, Jordan Brooks and Terrell Dodson, would do more. I mean, we saw Jalen Phillips out in some pass coverage. That first pass, I think, was to Tyler Warren, the tight end for the Colts, who they selected number 14 right after the Dolphins took Kenneth Grant, the defensive tackle, at number 13. We saw Jalen Phillips slip in coverage, but I just didn't see them showing any physicality, showing any aggression in the front. Zach Sealer and Kenneth Grant, Benito Jones, Jordan Phillips, none of those guys. I don't know why Willie Gay only played 9 special team snaps and no snaps from scrimmage. I'll ask Anthony Weaver that on Thursday when we get coordinators. This is a defense that needed some kind of a spark, and it just didn't do anything. I mean, what do you think about that performance from the edge rushers? What does it say about the future of this team? I hope they can snap out of this because they are largely veterans. Chop his second year. I hope that's a one-off. But boy, once Indy puts that stuff on film, New England is probably going to try to copy it.
Well, and it's exasperated by they get no help in the secondary. Okay, we talked the pass rush is going to help the secondary. Well, the secondary has to help the pass rush a little. And
right.
This is a game Jason Marshall Jr. looked like a rookie playing the slot.
Yeah.
I mean, and then you lose Storm Duck, who was getting beat on his own, and Rasul Butler. So I really don't know where they go in the secondary, because I remember I wrote a column in August saying this is the worst secondary in the league. And that was when they had Storm Duck as their quote number one receiver, which he was playing. That's not his role. He should not be a number one. I meant cornerback. And so just the architecture of the secondary leaves the front seven exposed a little. And then they didn't have a good game. They got out-muscled by a really good Indianapolis line. To me, I give credit to Indianapolis line on that more than faulting the Dolphin defense yet. We'll get into game 2. If we see it again, then that really will raise questions about the front seven.
Yeah, let me say what's up to a few more people here. Basketball Jones, legend, Jack Thompson, Rashawn Brokenbow, Robert Barrow. Good to see all you guys in here. Hyde, when you look at the cornerbacks, and I know I was talking about the front seven with Anthony Weaver's defense, but my goodness, like how much more can you mess up the cornerback situation with Jalen Ramsey, the draft? Cater was not their fault. That was, injuries happen. But you're out there getting all these guys, Mike Hilton and Juju Brents and Jack Jones. A lot of these guys they're not good cornerbacks. You're getting them late in camp. They don't have a chance to catch up. I think the cornerback situation is just something that they so poorly mishandled. And maybe it's kind of a metaphor for the whole off season of how some key issues were mishandled here. But you know that cornerback is such a central part of a defense nowadays. It's a pass-happy league. You know the quarterbacks you're facing this year, right? You haven't even gotten into them. You're going to see Josh Allen. Later, you see Lamar Jackson. You see Jaden Daniels. You see Joe Burrow. You're seeing a lot of high-quality quarterbacks here. And really, Daniel Jones, like, he didn't even really need to pick on the cornerbacks. They just beat them kind of organically. The cornerback situation, what does that tell you about Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel and like how they've handled the offseason? It makes a very bad statement to me.
Well, the answer in the offseason when we would ask the question about cornerbacks in the secondary, and God bless Weaver, he's put in a really bad situation. But his answer was what it had to be. It's an 11-man unit. We're going to help. But he knows, we all know, there's a reason there's a reason the defensive player of the year was a cornerback. Why cornerbacks are drafted high and get huge money. And because if you could schematically help cornerbacks all the time, then they wouldn't be making the money they do. Okay. And so the fact that Dolphins, again, to me, it goes back to the Jalen Ramsey trade. If you want to trade him, fine, I get it. He was a bad person in the locker room, a guy players didn't like and didn't go along with the program. So I get you had to trade him, but you got to replace him. You can't just say we'll be fine with somebody else playing cornerback on our roster when you look at the roster and it's a bunch of hopefuls. There's no proven talent there. You can't go into a season like that because, and again, that's Daniel Jones. It's not Josh Allen. I mean, it's
right.
And Weaver can only play zone. They can only play zone so many times and try to hide these guys in some type of coverage. At some point in the game, you got to play man, and that's when they get to the great quarterbacks, they're going to start picking them apart.
Yeah,
if they don't develop. If they don't develop, let's hope. I mean, if you're the Dolphins, you got to coach them out and hope somebody. Jason Marshall Jr., that's a tough spot for a rookie starting his fifth round pick, starting his first game. And so the idea is hope in a month from now he's up to speed because of all the learning he's doing.
Yep. Kenna Rankin says none of our cornerbacks is a system fit, and then goes on to say the Steelers let Minka go for a reason, and I think Sunday showed why. Why Finn Fan 81 says players aren't this bad. They just don't want to play for McClown. They want them gone. Sunday will be more of the same. What we saw, do you think that this is, and I know this is a segment talking about the defense, but do you think players want to play for Mike McDaniel? I think that's kind of a overblown thing. I think they can be tired of his message, but I don't know, I don't think they quit on Mike McDaniel. I think they were unprepared and uninspired, but I don't think they quit on Mike McDaniel on Sunday.
No, that's a hard one. The only coach I've ever seen players really quit on was Cam Cameron. When a couple told me this guy's a clown. I mean, and that was in the middle of the season too. So I think we're far too, the only guy that we know of didn't like him was Jalen Ramsey, and that's come out. Okay, now was he alone? Of course not. Not everybody likes the boss. I mean, that's part of any work. Now, Mike's different, and we all know that. And his thing was, can an unfootball coach become a successful football coach? Can the guy who wears the designer watch and the yellow shoes at practice and all that, can he and has different ideas on football? That was the experiment all along here. And I don't think it's going to be decided on do players want to play for him or not play for him. It's going to be decided on, are they good enough? Is this team good enough? And right now they have too many glaring holes across the lineup, from the secondary to the backup of the offensive line, the tight end, that they're trying to cover for to to make it work.
Hyde, let's go to the fan feelings real quick here because, if you've been on social media, it's toxic. It's as bad as I've seen it. And since my time being here with the Dolphins, I've lived here since '97. My first season covering them was 2000. I think this is season number 17 for me covering the Dolphins. This is the most toxic I've ever seen it. And Pretty Boy says, I'm probably one of the most positive fans ever, and I have no issue with how our fans are feeling. That game was horrible on all fronts. Is this the most toxic you've seen the fans? What can the fans do about this? Is not showing up for games the most effective thing? You remember the 2000 and 2001 playoff games weren't on TV. You remember a time when they had the black tarp on the upper level seats because people weren't showing up. Are fans justified in their feelings? Are they? Oh, is that overreaction Monday and overreaction Tuesday? What do you think about the fan reaction to one loss?
I think fans are justified doing whatever they want to do. Okay, that's at any point. That's my point. They're paying their money and they're giving their time and their allegiance. If they want to go to the games, go. If they don't want to go, stay home. If you want to boo, boo. In my job, one thing I try to do, and I can't do with the Dolphins, but I try to buy tickets to one game every year to remember what it's like to be a fan. And I remember going to a Florida Panthers game several years ago when they were bad, and within 5 minutes of the game, they were down 3-0, and I just spent like $500 on tickets, and I'm like angry. I know why fans boo. Okay, I get it. And so if fans want to boo, boo. If you want to stay home, you're justified doing whatever you want, especially with a franchise that has not delivered for 25 years and it delivered even a playoff win. And it strikes me as somebody who came in the mid '80s when Marino and Shula, they were just coming off a Super Bowl. That in recent years, the Hyde is getting a playoff win. That's it. Right. Can we get a playoff win? It's like that tells you how this franchise, how it's fallen off the map.
Peter McDowell says this team is crying out for discipline and old school coaching. Seeing Tua laughing after throwing the first pick and McDaniel's goofy comments, we need someone to light a fire under these guys. Is that a legit complaint? Anecdotal stuff like that. Now, I would, what I just said about the locker room, it's so chill and so laid back. And I've said that McDaniel's teams have disappointed and underachieved. Is this stuff anecdotal, or is this a jumping off point for what people have seen in the entire Mike McDaniel era?
Well, that's a legitimate question, the way Mike has gone about it. And let's remember, in sports, especially in the NFL, they do the opposite game. Brian Flores was as intense over the line. Okay, he went over the line, not just with players, but with staff, Dolphins personnel. But you talk about old school, hard driving, intense. He's everything that Mike McDaniel, now he's gone the other way, completely the other way. He's an offensive, nice guy, patting everybody. He wants to be players' friends. And my thought, you got to find some middle ground here. You got to find some middle ground between the guy who's just Brian Flores is a great coach, but people management skills here were awful. Okay, to the guy whose people management skills, he wants to be everybody's friend, but he has he's got to find his role as the boss too. So somewhere in the middle of all that is the answer to me.
Who's been the best coach they've had in recent years? And I'm talking about assistant coaches also. We had Dan Campbell, who we call Man Campbell. You did have Flo. I'm more Flo and Vic Fangio than I am McDaniel. Fangio was the guy who was just brutally honest. We need a defensive end, we need a safety, and we need a cornerback. I love that about him. I mean, there's Lou Anarumo, there's Darren Rizzi. If you go back to Todd Bowles, Ben Johnson was a Dolphins coach, which I know he was a lower level. He's now Chicago's head coach. Who would you say has been the best coach that the Dolphins have had in the last 15 years, and why? I like the Campbell style because I think that was very aggressive, very caring, very passionate. He wasn't ready to become a head coach, but I like somewhere between. Fangio was not a good head coach. Now, he was in Denver during COVID, so that's kind of unfair, but I don't think Fangio comes across as a complete coach. He's very football, very old school. I think maybe Dan Campbell, Lou Anarumo, Darren Rizzi, kind of that category is where I would lean as the best coach and who would be best for this type of team.
Well, I mean, you look at the coaches they've had, none of them have gone on to be a coach again. None of them gone on to be a head coach.
Well, Gase did briefly in New York with the Jets.
Okay. I should say none of them are a coach. None of them are a coach. Okay.
None of them were successful.
Yeah, so that tells you something because they couldn't even turn their first experience into something better a second time. So, but I'd also go to another level. Look at all the front office people. Jason Licht of Tampa Bay, who remarkable what they're doing as he was here for a bit. Brian Gaines, the assistant in Buffalo, was here for a bit. You can go around the league and that to me is just as telling and as important as the more obvious one of coach. But who's setting? What is the Dolphin way that Chris Greer has set? Is there a Dolphin way? I don't know what it is. I have no idea how he wants to win. When I look at his 10 years of drafting and building and working with coaches, his way is whoever the coach is. But all the coaches he hired he didn't hire. He was involved in the committee of hiring. They're all different and none of them have a common thread of what they think of football. So again, to me, if I'm Steve Ross, I'm looking at, okay, what kind of a program do we have here where every decision we make, there's no commonality to it of here's what I think football should look like.
And let me get back to your column for a second. And I know you're driving the bus on Chris Greer as GM emeritus, and he's got no vision.
GM for life.
If you're looking to make a change, if you're GM for life, that's a GM for life. If you're Steve Ross and you're looking to make a change, don't you have to sweep out all three people that you named in your column today? Chris Greer, Mike McDaniel, and Tua. Because if I'm a new coach and you give me Chris Greer and Tua, I'm going to say thanks, but no thanks, right? If you're a new GM and you give me McDaniel and Tua, I'm going to say thanks, but no thanks. If I don't want Tua if I'm a new coach and I'm trying to start off a new career and a new beginning. So I'll ask you two things. The clean sweep, tell me about that with your column. And do you just have to absorb the Tua cap hit, kind of like Denver did with Russell Wilson?
Yeah, to me, this is what's on the line right now. I mean, starting with how bad we all knew going into the season that the seats were hot under Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel, and by extension Tua. And they just got on fire after the first game because of the way it started. And that's what's on the line here. Okay, that's what the immediate beyond the scoreboard is. These guys are playing for their careers right now. Okay, and look, it's when a franchise is turned over as much as these guys, it's really not fun standing in the elevator as it's going down on guys' careers. It's really, it's because look at Mike McDaniel is a great person. I mean, look at his story, but we're judging as football coach, okay? And all these guys, Chris, from the way he's built this team, or let others build it. Mike, the way he's coached this team, with his newfangled ideas, new era ideas, and then Tua in his 6th year of quarterbacking this team, if they don't succeed by now, I'm sure. I mean, again, I don't want to say what's going to happen because Steve Ross is constantly surprising you, right? With the way he runs his team. But I cannot imagine them surviving this season if they're not successful. And as far as Tua's contract, that's just something they'll have to eat. And you know, I've been told it's not as bad as Russell Wilson's contract was in Denver. That there are ways to mitigate it some. We'll see. But and if those three guys are go, that means, you know, everybody's job's up for grabs around the team. So we're reaching a desperate situation already in game 2 of where this season can go. And that's not to say it'll go there, but it is to say when you have bad seasons, this is how they start. Okay, and the question is, can they snip it right here in week 2?
And we've talked about everybody else, so let's talk about Steve Ross briefly. You know, I go back and forth with people on Twitter. I say Steve Ross is a good owner because he does 2 of the things you want from your owner. He lets the football people make football decisions, and he opens his wallet. Now, people come back at me, and they make a very good point. Steve Ross makes bad hires. And so that is true. I don't know who he listens to now, whether it's, you know, Chris Greer mentioned, you know, I guess a meeting with Steve Ross, and he said Garfinkel and Tom Garfinkel, the president, and Brandon Shore, the salary capologist, for lack of a better term, were in on were there. So you know, he used to listen to, gosh, what was the guy's name?
Matt Higgins.
Yeah,
Carl Peterson. I don't think Carl Peterson at the very start. That was back in the day. A question. Yeah, that was when he was hired. Right. So I can't think of the guy's name.
I can't. Ross's culpability here. How much is Ross responsible for the mediocrity that they've been mired in since his ownership?
100%. Yeah. He's the owner.
Because of the bad hire.
Look, in 2019, when they decided to tank, they had that press conference, and I asked the question, why did Chris Greer survive and Adam Gase didn't? What was and why do you put Chris in charge of this massive undertaking of we're going to tank and rebuild with the draft, and that was Steve Ross's decision to do that. It was Steve Ross's decision to stick with him. Okay, it was Steve Ross's decision to fire Brian Florence and bring in Mike McDaniel, even though no other team so much as interviewed Mike McDaniel for the head coaching job. So when you say how much is he's 100% responsible. In fact, I don't like that I'm in this position of judging Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel for jobs that should they have been hired for? Should they have been put in these positions? That Steve Ross put him in this position. So he is 100% responsible for what's going on. And I agree with you. From a social, a civic standpoint, I think he's a great owner. He pays for his own stadium. He pays for the upkeep of his own stadium. He kept tennis and brought in F1 and helped enrich the sports environment of South Florida in a big, big way. And he spends money, and you look at every year they're the first team now in the union poll of support staff and all that. Yeah. So the organization is very, very good, but it's all mitigated by his hires.
Yeah. A couple of people on here, and I'm trying to get to who said it. We're talking about a new coach, and somebody said John Gruden and Deion Sanders.
God, no. Quit it. Stop. First of all, stop with throwing out coaches already after one game. But say, why is John Gruden always strong? John Gruden is everybody's first because he's on TV. What has he won lately? He hasn't won anything. It's like
he won in Tampa Bay. He didn't win in Tampa Bay
20 years ago.
Right. That's a win.
Oh my God. Okay, it's like Louis Riddick always gets thrown out as the GM. Why? because he's on TV and talking and everybody listens. And I think he's great on TV. I think he's great on TV. But that's going to be your GM?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, or head coach, Yeah. So let's move to our final segment here, and it's our prediction time for this game. It is Dolphins Patriots. I'll go first here. The Patriots. They're a team again. Mike Vrabel is the guy who I guess dealt this franchise a changing loss, that 2023, that 28-27 loss when he was the coach of Tennessee. They haven't recovered from that for a number of reasons. They got the left tackle there, Will Campbell. They got Drake May, the quarterback, but they might have been overhyped like I overhyped the Dolphins front seven. I don't know. They lose to Las Vegas in the opening week. The Dolphins under Mike McDaniel are 18-7 at home. This is the game where you're going to need that 1 p.m. heat and humidity to work in your favor, right? I'm going Dolphins 24-20. Gosh, I hope I'm right. I would hate to be 0-2 starting off the season. I picked Dolphins 17-13 last week. For this offense to score 3 touchdowns might be a small miracle considering the right side of the offensive line might be gone. But that's what I'm going to go with. What are you thinking for this game, Hyde?
Yeah, I'm going Dolphins 2017. A 1 o'clock start in September in South Florida is the greatest home field advantage in sports. And look at New England when they come out for the second half and throughout the second. You can't prepare for it, what that heat will do. Even if it's not sunny, the humidity will crush teams. So between that and between the simple fact, I just don't want to deal with them if they go 0-2 for all the stuff that will have to be written and all the conclusions or the track that will be on. I feel like I've been on that track too many times in the last 25 years. So between those two ideas, I'm going with the Dolphins 2017.
I don't like what I'm seeing here on the text line. Scott Pro saying Pats 40-3 over the Dolphins.
No.
YFinFan81 says Pats 28-13. Let's see. Rob says Pats 27-20. Chris says Pats 27, Dolphins 9. Hyde, the fan base. Like, is this still Overreaction Tuesday, or is this genuine? Like, I can't stop thinking about the anger and the hostility of this fan base. Yes, it is justified, but is this overboard? What have they like? What's going on here?
They're your fans, Perk. You tell them. To me, they can say whatever they want, and the Dolphins haven't given them reason to believe.
I agree.
But again, I think the Dolphins are a mediocre team. They're not. They shouldn't be a 33-8 team. If you want to criticize them, and I did, for being mediocre, I don't think I'm going to be criticizing them for being a 3-win team. But I've been surprised before.
Yeah. Cap for Life checks in. 17-14 Dolphins. Basketball Jones 21-20 Miami. So. All right, Raphael Courtwright, one of our regulars, New England 17-3. Wow. Billy Batson says Realization Tuesday with Perk.
One big issue in that game will be, does Christian Gonzalez play for the Patriots? Their shutdown cornerback, because their whole defense, Vrabel's defense, is predicated on having those type of cornerbacks, and if he's not there, that'll be great news for the Dolphins.
Yeah, I think I saw that he has not practiced since July 28th, and I know he missed the opener. It's the hamstring injury. And, he was out like a lot of his rookie year, and then but he's a quality cornerback. I think second team All-Pro in 2024 last year, I guess, or last year, I guess. So CCPR, Pats 27-0, Donovan Russell 20-17. But I don't know who he says. Let me finish on this. Robert Barrow says, wouldn't it be better to get 3 wins, get the reset wouldn't it be better to get 3 wins, get the reset at GM, head coach, and quarterback rather than go 8-9 again? Here's my thing with that, Hyde. I don't know. Here's what I've said, that when McDaniel and Greer couldn't win with the best talent this franchise has had in 20 years, why would I think they can win with lesser talent with this drafty youth program? I don't have any faith in that, and that's kind of where I'm torn. I don't want to see a 3-win season, but I need to be convinced that these guys know what they're doing and that they could win with lesser talent than they had when they had Armstead and Campbell and Ramsey. I'm not convinced that they can win with lesser talent.
I think that question is a very valid question. It's not the right time to if they go through September 0-4, then that's the time to address that question. Is okay now, like the Heat did. 2008, the Heat, Shaq demanded to be traded. Dwayne Wade then was lost for the season, and they had no choice but to say, okay, we're going to tank for next year,
right?
And we're going to get a high draft pick, and all that stuff. So if the Dolphins, week 2 isn't the time to address. Do you want to be awful? Now week 6, week 7, if you already are awful, that'd be the time to address that. And I mean address it as an organization, meaning Steve Ross addresses it, and we'll see what he decides.
Yep. All right. That's going to wrap it up. We appreciate everybody. I mean, this chat is just lit. Lit. It is on fire. Thanks for everything, everybody. Dave Hyde, nice to see you.
The emotion.
Nice
I love the emotion. The fans are showing more emotion than the Dolphins did last Sunday. I like that. Very good, Perk. You got a good crowd here.
Oh, it's a great crowd. I love this crowd. I love Dolphins fans, man. They are some of the most patient fans in pro sports. I'm telling you. They're still
You bring up a good point. What I should have said, this whenever I'd write a critical or a questionable article, like what are they doing with the secondary or this offense, I'd get pounded by Dolphin fans. Where's your optimism? Where's your optimism? And I was like, I'm a fairly optimistic person, but I have to call it like I see it too. And so, but
right.
The patience and optimism of Dolphin fans has been very interesting to watch the last 20 years.
It has. We thank them for their loyalty and their passion. Really, it's the passion that we really appreciate because that's what gets us paid. All right, Dave Hyde, we will check in with you at some other point during the season. To everybody, we'll be back. Actually, we have to check when we're going to be back for the next show. It might be Monday because it's a Thursday night game, but we will let you know our next show via social media. Thanks for everything, everybody. We will see you next week.